You are straight out of 1997. You've got like really high blue Adidas shorts with that giant Adidas logo on and some like Puma Kings. I mean, that is a stellar top. I mean, I know mine's retro but new. I think that you did. I mean, did you get that in 1996?
This is my university football team training top from Pro Star. So that was 2004-2005 season. It's done pretty well to still be alive, hasn't it? I mean,
that's OG. It has, yeah. I don't just love how things back in like the late 90s and early 2000s were just oversized.
Yeah, look how big this thing is.
Look, I mean, I know, and you're like many years older than what you were. You should have probably filled out a little bit. No, you're just drowning in it.
Still drowning in it. I mean, we've got to take into account that I'm still, as a performance athlete, at the top level. So
elite.
There is that.
Yeah, elite. Well, my top, since let's start on that. My top is a replica of the 1990 to 1991 Forest training top when I was a mascot, and they re-released it as a training top. I was like, I've got to have that. That's just insane. It's the same year, so I bought this. Yeah.
Did you hear Pep
special? Isn't it?
Did you hear Pep Guardiola? That is amazing. Was talking about Nottingham Forest in a press conference.
I heard what he said. Incredible. They've got one more Champions League than us. Damn right. Might have been 45 years ago, but it's okay.
Before it was called the Champions League. But look,
yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Before it was even acknowledged as that competition. But yes, Champions of Europe twice, 78, 78, 79.
So good theme today. We've got the sort of sport theme. You've got a cool retro professional top one. I've just got some old crap that I used to at university, but look, it's okay.
Yeah, but yours is true heritage, Doug. True heritage, yours.
Yeah, this is
Mine
legit.
Is plucked off a shelf at the Forest Megastore.
Do you think Pro Star actually still exists as a company? Because if they...
No, absolutely. I mean, they had a short run. Look at it. I mean, look at their design team. They didn't last long, did they?
Well, look, they make stuff that lasts.
Actually, quick Google Pro Star, right? Let's just have a quick look-see.
This stuff lasts.
Pro Star football. Let's have a look. Oh my goodness, yeah, it's owned by Mitre, I think. Pro Star football. Let's see what this is about. Oh no, it's a football school. That's definitely not it. I think it's owned by Mitre, Doug.
It's been one of Mitre's brands. I mean, Mitre's one of the most dogged of all the football brands.
Oh, you ready for this? This is a great little nugget. Mitre, seem as though Mitre sell it, but they only sell socks.
Pro Star.
That's what, they're relegated to the bottom of the sportswear industry. They sell socks, and they are black with, well, actually you get multiple colours, but basically you get the choice of a solid colour with 3 stripes at the top.
So today, you're leading today, aren't you? I'm going to do the lead in, but you've come stacked with content.
I've come, filled to the brim-ish of things to discuss around what we see as a startup studio with what founders do.
Not many people who have invested in 35 startups. Rich and Mohara have. Today, we are going to listen to 5 mistakes that most startup founders make. Listen to this, avoid those mistakes, save yourself a decade. All right, so this came about, I was chatting for one of the big tech companies, quite senior, and he was like, look, I want to start a startup. And the reason I want to do it is because I get approached all the time by these, Series A startups that have had a bit of funding that want to grow, and they pitch me to come and join their team. And I look at the idea and I think, shit. And I think, cool, actually, why don't I just do this myself? And he's like, Doug, should I just do this myself? And I said, given what you're earning and given the risk of starting a startup and given the fact that a lot of the skills that you have probably won't be that relevant, if you want to, but you really have a desperate burning desire to do it, then definitely don't let me stop you. But you'll probably fail, and only do it if you are prepared to just go into war for multiple years and taking all that risk. So not sure if he's going to do it or not, but I definitely think what he's not going to do is, I can barely take myself seriously in this top. What I think he's not going to do is join one of these startups that Series A that's shit. And so my question to you, Rich, is as somebody that has invested in a lot of startups and sees hundreds every year.
Yep.
And my context is off the back of a failed startup, which you know about.
Yeah, you were in the portfolio of failures for us, weren't you, Doug? In the portfolio of failures.
It's gone in the zero return bucket. The question is, like, what are founders doing that makes my friend think they're all shit? Because they're obviously not all shit, but a lot of them are. What are they doing wrong, and what should they avoid? You've got 5 things, haven't you?
Yeah, I mean, I've got 5 things that we see that they shouldn't be doing fairly early stage. You know, this is like 0 to 24 months of their startup career. So by the time they get into your buddy at Series A, invariably they've done something right. They've got some traction, but it doesn't mean that Series A and beyond is not bereft with challenges. Just as a little kind of bit of extra context around that Series A piece, very, very good friend of mine, tremendously intelligent and successful ex-corporate lawyer that actually went into investment banking to become a CFO of Series A, Series B, a couple of companies. And even at that size, it was a mess. You know, he went through 3 and 5 years or 6 years. Every single one of them was a little bit rudderless, you know, and the fact that the founders were somewhat eccentric, somewhat, I guess, egotistical, and just on a whim would change the direction of the company. So there was a level of maturity in those failed companies that just wasn't there. So I don't think what I'm about to talk through, which is pre-Series A really, is necessarily completely avoided later on. I think there sometimes people get through and get lucky. So first thing, so let's take it right back to the beginning. This is no particular order or importance. There is I mean, I don't know whether you and old Reese boy felt this when you started Better Schools, but there's such a feeling amongst founders when they do something that they're completely right, and they don't necessarily go through any form of gated validation before they start. So they're not actually doing any talking to any of their customers. They're not trying to form any body of waitlist or any collection of people that they can talk to understand the true problem within inside of the market. So that nailing that initial validation and understanding of whether there's even a purpose or point of building this company is a big one. And it should absolutely be gated. You know, there should be different levels of traction to say, should we proceed or kill? Should we proceed or kill? Should we proceed or kill? Whereas most go, oh, I've got this idea for this, you know, I don't know, sportswear company. I want to do an e-commerce thing. I'm going to sell socks. They're not testing with the market. They go straight in and building. Even though there are books and books and books on you need to validate, go and talk to your market. They still go and think, no, I've got the idea. I've got it right. It still happens. So the first thing is, don't even think about building anything until you've got 3, 5, 6,000 people, well, 100 people to 1,000 people saying, I'm interested in your product. And that's a really straightforward wait list that you can build on a website. You can spin this stuff up in an hour. You know, you've got to be out there. And as soon as you get those people on your wait list, talk to them. Most people don't talk to them. They go, I've got 500 people on my wait list. I'm going to go and be a millionaire. They don't actually go and talk to them to understand why they signed up. What is their issue? And because all of that insight is how you then progress it.
Yeah, and so in our business, which was essentially, it was a marketplace for schools finding suppliers.
Yeah. And
the problem that we found is that, like, we definitely didn't do enough validation. I said, Reese, I've got it.
I've got it, mate.
I can actually.
I see you on the golf course, mate.
I can. I remember the night, and he quite rightly was like, Doug, are you fucking sure about this? And I was like, look, I've worked in schools. They are fucked. They get rinsed left, right, and centre on their by their suppliers, which is true. But that obviously does not. Looking back now, I can very clearly tell that does not translate into the business working. And in a kind of B2B product like that, it is pretty nuanced, isn't it? It's like, you know, the research that I did, I validated the supply side a little bit better. But obviously, suppliers want to sell into schools. So I tootled down to a fucking trade show. And I spoke to all these suppliers. I was like, cool, we can get you into schools. And they're like, amazing. Yeah, we pay for that. Okay. But then the school side is quite nuanced because I spoke to a couple of schools and I knew a few people. And they all sort of said yes in theory, but the reality of actually using us to source a supplier, do the deal, was not validated well enough before we got going. And, you know, if you fuck up there, you are literally taking months and years of time. You're putting it in a big drum and you're burning it.
The thing about it is that people don't. Some of the founders we've seen over the years, and it's been 12 years of speaking to founders. They are so protective of their idea that they think that they can't go and talk to people about it. When they don't realise, and we know that, we started a podcast about ideas and comfortably talk about all of ideas because we know how hard it is to actually go and get an idea to become anything. And I think more people should talk about ideas freely. So there is a reticence to go and talk to their market because they're, oh no, I can't do that because I'm in stealth mode. I'm like, no one gives a fuck. Go and talk to your customers to understand whether you're going to go and spend 3 years of your life trying to build this thing. And also, don't go and build the thing that you think everybody wants. Go and build the thing that people do want. Unless you're like a Steve Jobs and they don't know it yet. But 99.9% of the products out there either don't need to exist or you haven't spoken to your audience.
Okay, solid start. Number 2.
Right, so I think this is quite an interesting one, and sometimes it might be challenging for first-time founders to understand this, but this is the capitalization table, so the cap table, and making sure that they make decisions ahead of time when they're forming their company with how they distribute equity. This is a big challenge at the moment for startup studios that originate ideas because they tend to take 40% of the cap table, which doesn't leave a lot of room for MDs, doesn't leave a lot of room for follow-on founders. You need to make sure that if you've got a founding team, that you've got an understanding of roles and responsibilities and how you're going to incentivize them. Don't necessarily think because you all came up with the idea that you're all equal. Because if you're not going to be quitting your job and you're not going to be working full time on it, you don't need to be receiving the same amount of cap table equity position. So thinking carefully and doing your research around cap table and what the impacts could be. If you get to a point where you have got people on a cap table and they're not actively involved in the business and you cannot get rid of them, that will detrimentally affect how investors will view you. One, in your capability to set your company up, but also two, how they become incentivized. Also, if you've got, in their view, too little equity by the time you might go through Series B and you're down around 10, 12, 15%, they're going to be worried about you being even remotely interested in continuing this journey. So research cap table, make sure it's balanced. Don't be greedy, but certainly do not be too generous with the people that you think you need to incentivize that you don't. So take advice on it. So cap table stuff ups is definitely number 2.
Okay. I don't think I have a lot to add to that other than when I listen to podcasts about this shit, people talk about it all the time. So that sounds solid. So the the third one is holding nerve when you're actually out in market with your product, and this is about feature chasing. So we've seen a number of founders and a number of companies. They've got something out in market and they're beginning to get market traction. So they're beginning to get people to use their product, and they are doing the right things about listening to the market, but people invariably will suggest features which will heavily customize, a tool. You could build this feature that might be used by this customer, particularly in the B2B space, where there's a lot of influence on, how much they'll pay you to do it. So it needs to be about personalization and not customization when you're actually building the product out. So don't necessarily feature chase. Hold your nerve for what you want the vision of the product to be and what the majority of your customers are saying back. Even if it's like 60, 70% of people are saying this is what we need to have, that should be your direction of travel rather than trying to feature chase and trying to bloat the product out. And we've seen it many times like, oh, well, so-and-so's got so much influence in the market, we could really do with landing them, but they need this. Whereas there's 5 customers over there who don't really care about that. So making sure that you stay grounded about what the market wants and making sure you do not just try to build everything for everyone, because it becomes a nightmare and it's very, very difficult from an architecture point of view for the tech. Yeah, I can imagine people.
Did you see that? Did you see that with BSP? Did you get any features? Did you get any feature requests back in from schools or anything, or did they not engage?
Yeah, we did. We got that to a small degree. I think I would just, with this point, I would imagine this is like a trap that people fall into a lot, just because it must just be so tempting. Yeah. A big contract that you've got a good relationship, a big company you've got a good relationship with says, we'll pay you, $300,000 if it does this, and you just become a sort of consultancy business at that stage, don't you? If that then can't be scaled, but it must be hard. I'd imagine, particularly if your money's running out and your cash flow's tight, and you just divert. I will just divert some resources to this. But yeah, I've seen and heard of this happening a lot, where you just become a consultancy business. That's a risk.
Number 4, everybody needs support relationships around a founder or around a founding team when you start. Sometimes, particularly with first-time founders, they don't understand the true value of what is needed at the early stage of their company, and they're valuing the wrong things in support relationships. Like, this could be anything from, I really want to work with this company because they've got a great brand director and they've designed some beautiful brands, yet they're building a tech product that is, integrating with all sorts of complex, services. Yet they're valuing the ability to design. I'm talking actually not just brand building, I'm talking about like design. They're valuing that over the technical capability of a partner that could actually go and build it out. We had one recently, it actually involved us, where the stopping point as to whether we were an appropriate partner for this person was an SLA. So, will you respond to tickets of bugs in a certain time frame when there's no customers yet, there's no market yet, he hasn't proven anything yet, and his selection criteria is around support services rather than the capability of what the team has to actually build his product in the first place, and you're completely valuing the wrong thing when it comes to relationships. So when you're looking at it as a founder and you're thinking, okay, I've got these things to go and build, I've got a marketing campaign, I've got a product, I've got my validation, I need to understand exactly how I do my capital partners. Think deeply about what you really want from them and research what that person needs to provide you, what that group needs to provide you, and make sure that they demonstrate that strength really, really strongly. And don't sweat the small stuff. Like a support ticket, for example, is irrelevant at this point. What you need to do is to find someone who's done it before, who's built it in the right way, and who you've got a great relationship with. So I think valuing the wrong things in support relationships is a doozy, and you see it a lot in advisory as well.
What do you mean what do you mean advisory? In just
advisors, so like advisors who will come in, and there'll be equity advisors at some point, and they'll have a great profile in corporate. They would have worked for Nectar, or they would have worked for Nike, or they would have worked for all this kind of experience, but they'll have no experience in the first 3 years of a business. But because they work for Nike, you think they're great, but you're valuing the wrong thing. You need to see what they've done and how do they fit your journey at that point.
Yeah, it's actually
the key thing.
One of the things that we had one of the advisors that we had to Better Schools Project was a head teacher and was an incredible head, probably I would imagine one of the best in the country at the time, and was like he was so positive about the idea, and the reason was because he would have needed that service. It's like, cool, yeah, it was tough dealing with suppliers. We'd love to do this. The idea sort of sounds really good. So from his perspective and his experience, it was good. What we really needed, 9 years ago at the very start, was just somebody that really intimately understood these kind of B2B marketplaces that could just say, you are dealing on both sides of this marketplace with organizations that are a fucking nightmare. On one hand, you've got schools, unsophisticated, low budget, dealing with local suppliers, lots of stakeholders, and on the other hand, you've got building companies who are not used to dealing with these kind of relationships. They're not used to dealing with schools. They're not that sophisticated, and you're trying to mesh those two things together. We just needed someone to sit us down and go, boys, that's stop, just fucking stop. But we just didn't, we didn't come across the right person with the right experience at the right time. But that person would have been really hard to find. Like, who could have given us that advice? It was hard. But yeah, you're totally right. You just got to get the right insights at the right time.
Yeah. And I think it's okay to recognise that people have got a part of your journey at that period and will not be with you for forever. It's a bit like the founder CEO kind of positioning. Like, most founders aren't CEOs of growing companies. They're just not. They have a part to play in the first period of that business, and then they will have a different role to play in it, and other people come in. It's the same for your advisors, and that is the support relationships that every startup needs.
What this is making me think is that actually this this advice is not just relevant for startups. So I'm looking now at 3 big challenges that we have in Kalium, for example, and so one of them is diversification of product lines, and we have one product line, and we're just exploring a couple of others. I really want to I would like to speak to someone that has built this kind of agency, that has diversified that product line, that has taken it from the revenue that we are to the revenue that we want to go to. How many people are there in the world that have done that? I would say that is got the specific advice that I need. I would say it's probably under 100 people in the world, probably under 50, probably under 20 that can really have done the exact thing, that have experienced it in this type of industry at this type of level. I just need to ideally find that person and convince them to tell me what to do, because they know they've done it.
Yeah, so a bit of a shameless plug coming here. We've just invested in a company called Boardly, which was spun out of a really successful recruitment company called Upley, and their business is to essentially matchmake and pair any NEDs, so non-executive directors and advisors, to early stage and later stage businesses. So they found that from their traditional recruitment business, that there was a need, like you've just talked about, there was a need to find these people, and where do you discover them from? And Boardly is basically going straight at that. The reason we found that really interesting was because obviously we're building many companies in parallel, and that all those important people that wrap around it, and those advice and support relationships are super vital. And they almost, the interesting thing about this is they almost become agents for the startup and the company, and also the advisor. So that you think about a football club and how you're going to go and find those players, that network and that understanding, it's that way of working. I think it's going to be really interesting. I'm looking forward to it launching later this year.
How much do you reckon you need to pay for non-executive director on a monthly basis?
So I can give you a little bit of insight on this. So I got down to the top 2 of a neobank supported by NatWest called BO, just before body odor, just before COVID happened. The package there was exceptionally attractive. It was a day and a half a month, and it was 80 grand a year.
Was it actually 80 or pro rata 80?
It was 80,000, yeah. As in, I receive 80 grand. But I did talk when I was talking to the headhunter, he said the average for a non-exec is anywhere between 35 and 65. The reason why Bo were paying so much is because they were in a bit of a spot. So I think it can range between that. I mean, thinking when I've had mentors in the past, 150 to 200 an hour if you're going to be short term. I know a couple of my friends have paid up to 500. So it really does depend, and I think it depends on how motivated people are and also how they're incentivized. If it's pure cash, it's obviously going to be higher. Some people want equity slices and stuff, but their support networks are just so important, and how you make sure you choose correctly and valuing the correct thing is the ticket.
Okay, number 5.
So number 5 is something that founders don't do, I believe, in the correct way. It's about setting the vision for the company, something that I care passionately about because that's predominantly my role at Mohara. And that it should be split into 3 things, or 3 different categories, in that it should be the future. So that's that true North Star of what you're wanting to achieve as a company. It should be what you want to do, halfway to your journey or along your journey, and what you need to be focused on immediately. So it's like now, next, and future of your vision, because you're not going to be able to go in and convince investors, people who to join you, your business partners and your early stage employees, if you just constantly talk about the future, because that end North Star vision, whilst it's very, very important, is not going to be tangible. It's not going to be reachable. You're not going to go and do that in 6 months, 2 years time. It can take 10 years. So you've got to make sure that you've got different steps of vision along the way. And that is that now, next, and future. So I saw a great example from our 0 to 1 partners, who's Fabio, in their book Traction, that stated Elon Musk or Tesla's kind of secret plan for what they wanted to do. So their future plan was basically to sunset fossil fuels, in terms of the operating vehicles. They want to get rid of petrol, diesel cars. That's what he wanted to do. He wanted to get rid of fossil fuel usage for transport. But he can go in there and he can say, we're going to go and do that, but everyone's going to be asking, well, what does that mean? How is that real now? So what he did, so he started with changing the mindset of an electric car. So if you look at the 90s, you know, it was the crappy little one-seaters going around that went about 3 miles before they died, and they were awfully slow, run by traditional car batteries. So they worked hard on that lithium technology and how they could strap those batteries together, and they changed the perspective. The first thing was to change the perspective of how electric cars have used, and they created the Tesla Roadster. Suddenly, electric cars are not the old crappy things like golf carts. They're sexy and they're quicker than a petrol car. So that's Mark 1. Now we've done that. The second piece for the vision is to get mass market, to get penetration into the consciousness of society, that electric cars are a better option to fossil fuel driven cars. And that's like your Tesla 3. You know, he's got the Y and he's got the S and he's done that. But the Tesla 3 is the mass market and the most popular selling car in the world last year. I think incredibly hitting his goals. And then his future will ultimately to be get these cars banned. I mean, you saw Rishi the other day delayed the ban of new cars to 2035, but that is the future. We are going to ban cars like that. But what's really important about setting this now, next and future is it gives you something to push to in the shorter term and also achieve. If you can show that you've changed your next and you hit your next, investors are going to believe that you can do your... Sorry, if you hit your now, investors will believe you hit your next. If you hit your next, people will believe you do the future, rather than just going for that pipe dream. So it gives you the chance to hit success and metrics and indicators that you are a winner, and people will follow that. So that's the last one. Now, next, and future vision making.
Yeah, I think I've enjoyed this. I think what is good about this advice from you is just that you're seeing it all the time. You're speaking to these people all the time, and you said to me at the start, you're like, Doug, fucking hell, I only spent like 30 seconds putting this list together, but like you've got 15 years of just talking to these people and you've picked out the stuff you think is the most important. I think I actually quite liked it. I know that we sort of started this with ideas and we're just kind of playing around with different formats, but I think insights on how founders should think about things is good. I've done it, fucked it up. You've done it, some good, some bad. So I think it's good. Yeah. Nice one, Rich. Let's not wear these tops again. Well, yours is okay. I'm never going to wear this again. It's going to go back in the bottom of my sports drawer.
Have you got any? Do you have matching tracksuit bottoms to that?
Unfortunately, no. And I don't think ProStar are going to deliver those anymore. Now they just do socks.
They're not. I tell you what, though, I'm going to get you some socks for your birthday.
25th of July.
Okay. Exactly. Okay. Well, thank you very much, Doug. If you'd like to hear more of these kind of, I guess, advice from Doug and I's past of what we're learning professionally, please do like, subscribe and comment below, and we'll bring some of it forward, because I think we talk about ideas in the main, but it's also about executing on the ideas. It's not just discussing those, and I think this gives hopefully some indication of how you could avoid some of the pitfalls when you are executing. Thanks, Doug.